Good evening, everyone. Thank you, President Pistol. Thank you for this, and thank you for having us in a wonderful facility. It's great to be back in Anderson. As the President points out, my name is Kyle May. I'm a senior planner with Planning Next. We're a community planning firm based in Columbus, Ohio, and we've been helping your community navigate what is a very complicated process, a metropolitan transportation plan. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later on, and we're going to talk a little bit more about why your role in this process is so critical. But a couple of things from the President's remarks I thought were quite interesting as they relate to what we're talking about. Number one, I think you need to move the shot back. That will help you a little bit. Full court might be a little harder. Number two, I love the note you started this about this idea of experiencing this transportation infrastructure, the notion of I wish I was in charge, I would make different decisions. Well, the way we do planning today, you've become a lot more in charge. And this meeting today and the meetings that we've had leading up to this are a demonstration of that. You all experience this system, you contribute to it, and tonight's event and questions and conversation are really all about continuing this planning process and bringing you, those people that experience the system, invest in the system, into a planning process that's going to help move that system forward in what we believe is a very progressive way. So we're really, I say we, myself and Logan Stang from our office are very excited to be here with you tonight. We've got a lot of big questions to ask. We've got a great presentation put together for you, but ultimately tonight's agenda is about a little bit of presentation, but also a lot of discussion along with all of you, some review of the work we've done so far, but some discussion around the really big questions that have started to emerge from this pretty complicated process about how do we move people and goods more efficiently around your community and indeed around your region. So thank you again to Anderson University for this wonderful space. Thank you again for being one of those things that's so critical in terms of the lifeblood of your community, which is generating more and more talented young people. We have these conversations around the country. The key thing, that we bring into this is how do we retain and grow talent in place and make sure that that talent, once it is trained, really is in love with the community that trained it, right? And really wants to stay and continue to invest in that place. So as we launch our meeting tonight, as you saw in a lot of the promotion, Destination 2045 is pretty high-minded. We think this is a pretty important moment for the communities of the Madison County region. There's a lot going on, and Brian Phelps from the MCOG is going to talk a lot more about that, as is Gabe Klein. There's a lot going on in the community and in the world, indeed, that make now a really important time to be doing planning in general, but very specifically transportation planning. These guys are going to tell you a whole lot more about that in specifics, but I'm excited for you because you're doing this work really at the right time. And when you do this work, this transportation planning, this mobility conversation, it's not just about transportation, right? It's about community investments. It's about land use. It's about growth, development, those questions. But it's also about quality of life, quality of place, and indeed, quality of opportunity for young people, for people of all ages, better access to opportunities, better access to lifestyle amenities and all those sorts of things. So we're excited to be involved in this process and also that you're doing this work right now. Our agenda tonight is ambitious, so I'm going to do my best, which I've never been quite good at, is being very brief. I'm going to be very brief in the welcome here and in the process because I want to get to the substance and I especially want to get to that discussion. We want to talk about the state of your region, where you are today, where you could be tomorrow without intervention, and where you might be tomorrow with some progressive action on your part. We want to also have a great keynote presentation from our invitee here, Gabe Klein, national expert on these issues we're going to be talking about. Very excited to have him in the room. But as you see, a major part of tonight is about this discussion, testing some direction statements, testing a vision, testing some specifics from the work that these guys have done, and having some conversations at the tables. So for those of you that are a little lonely right now in terms of your get-together, we may ask you to find some partners a little bit later on, but I won't do that now, table 2. I'll let it ride just a little bit longer, okay? We're excited you're here. There's a big word that we're going to use a lot tonight that we wanted to define right from the offset because it's just so critical to our conversation. It's this word, mobility. We used to just say transportation, but mobility is a little more encompassing of the work that these guys are trying to do. What is mobility? It's the way you get around your neighborhood, right? It's how and where you commute. It's how we move goods from A to B. Gabe's going to get into this in a lot more depth and in a lot broader focus, but basically mobility is how far you or your children can get on a bike. It's how far you can walk from your hometown. It's how free you are, the ability to move or be moved freely and easily around your community or indeed around the region. This word is important. It's a massive word. It's a big word. It's packed with a lot of things, but it's the focus of our process and our planning effort. Some housekeeping. Restrooms, pretty easy. Women's and men's, to the right and to the left. Wi-Fi is going to be important in tonight's presentation as we get to, we're going to have some smartphone polling. You don't have to be on the Wi-Fi to participate in this, but it might be a little bit quicker. So you've got some guides actually on your station that can show you how to get to that. You see those little table tents. They're going to show you how to connect. It's Raven's Guest. It couldn't be easier. You're just going to click and get connected. So that's going to be this thing right in the center if you'd like to connect. Paperwork, don't forget that sign-in sheet. That's going to be in green in the center if you'd like to stay involved in the process. Get some updates, just let us know you were here. We'd really appreciate that. Volunteer as much or as little information as you'd like. Table leaders, you don't have to determine that now, but if you've got an itch to really lead your table through this discussion today, start thinking about volunteering for that. Okay, I see some folks that are already good, eligible people in that realm. And if you need help, we've got lots of help. Blue shirts, raise your hands everywhere around the room. We've got some great folks from MCOG here to help out. We've got Logan in the corner from my office. And from our stakeholder committee, because we've had great leadership throughout this process. If you're a member of the stakeholder committee, could you also raise your hand, please? Don't be shy. There we go. We got some great representation from our group as well. So they're here to help. They're here to help on anything, whether it's about Wi-Fi, you may want to check with the blue shirts on that, or if it's more specifically about our program. So again, we believe this is a pivotal moment. It's not just about the plan we're putting together, but it's the opportunity of that plan. There's real money that's tied to this work. Usually when you do planning, it's about, okay, now how do we fund all these great ideas we have? In the case of the MTP and doing this at a regional level, there's my first acronym of the night. I'm sorry, the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. These guys do a lot of acronyms, okay? The letters thing, we try to define those in your agenda. So on the third page, you're going to see all those terms defined, but I'm going to try my best not to do them. But this is exciting because when we get done with this process, there's some real funding opportunities for each of these projects. It can be updated throughout the work, and it can be updated through this plan and even into the future. And we believe that this type of planning is really a proactive approach. It allows you to put your head up, look at your challenges and opportunities, and try to be strategic about your investments, not just with transportation and mobility, but about economic development, about land use, growth, housing. You can tie all these things together and really make a big impact in your community. And as these guys are really going to tell you, now is a great time to think big, think regionally. And an MTP, there we go again, a Metropolitan Transportation Plan is a requirement under federal law, but it's really at the highest level. It's this guide of how do we invest in our transportation system. It goes from things like sidewalks all the way up to interstate interchanges and regional transit. All these things are encompassed in this very, very broad and large and ambitious process. But it is mandated for metropolitan planning organizations, and Ryan will tell you a whole lot more about that. But it helps us guide, as a community, guide how we invest in that infrastructure. We all, as Americans, have built a significant amount of infrastructure over the last 10 years, 20 years, and especially 50 years. We can't fix it all overnight. We can't address all the congestion issues overnight. We have to prioritize. And through planning processes like this, we're able to do that. And not just do it alone in a room with it shut, but rather in conversations just like this, which is a new addition to this type of work. It's part of what we're doing tonight is really not beginning a conversation, but continuing one. I see a lot of familiar faces in the crowd, which is great, that have been involved in some of our earlier conversations on this topic. We have over 100 participants that have contributed their time, their ideas to our first round of engagement through Intercept activities and online forums. We also had a series of focus groups, so I see some of those faces as well. We got more detailed because a lot of this stuff gets really detailed really quick. It's about moving freight through your community, those issues. It's about the public safety and how they interact with that network, the pedestrian, the bicycle network, cyclists, those sorts of things. All those interests are really critically important, and we've tried hard to engage them through round one. And some ideas that have come out of these, I'm not going to put numbers to them because they really do range. But these conversations have been interesting because the feedback we've gotten is, one, been really resonant. There's a lot of things that people are concerned about, but two, it's been also quite wide-ranging. But one thing at the center, and it's at the center of these dots on purpose, is that people should really be at the center of this decision-making process. Meaning that as we evaluate projects, it's the impact to people's lives, their quality of life, their quality of place, that's really, really critical here. It's not just about necessarily just the efficiency of the network, but it's also about the impact of people and people's lives. Movement of people and goods, where do people want to live? This lifestyle question has been important, and Ryan will dig into that a little bit more when he talks about population. But ultimately, we've had a lot of discussions already, and what we're here to do tonight is really to test the direction. So the work we've done so far, everything we've heard up until this point, tonight we want to test to see if we're close, if we're heading on the right path, and if so, great. This is going to be wind in our sails. If we need to pivot, that's fine too. But we need to know along with you if we're headed down the right path, because we intend to come back to you, maybe in a little bit of different forum, but come back to you through the regional expedition and exhibition and review, prioritize, and really launch the plan into the future. So we're excited for this middle piece, this primary piece of our engagement work, but I also want to let you know that we're not done with that. So why are we here tonight? Our purpose with Destination 2045 is to do a few things. One is to share what you told us. We did a little bit of that already, but to share all the variety of ideas that you told us, whether it was about freight, whether it was about transit, whether it was about the cycling network. We're also here to think about some new ideas. So we're not done generating ideas. So we want you to think hard, think critically about your experience, using the network, your experience and where you live, and what you think could be done to improve this place over time. We want to test our direction, and I talked a little bit about that already. And last, tonight, we really want to start to build something together. That Metropolitan Transportation Plan, while it's federally mandated, it's got a lot of checklists and requirements, it can also be a lot of what you want it to be, right? And it should be defined about everybody's priorities in this room and the folks that are connected to you outside of this room. So we really want to start to build that thing here tonight. What it's going to look like, what it's going to inspire, and what it eventually is going to deliver for you in terms of an improved place and an improved transportation network. But you also made a choice to be here, and a choice that we really, really do appreciate. You care about the future of your community. That's quite obvious, or you wouldn't give up a couple hours on a Wednesday night to be here to talk about it. You also have ideas. I know that because a lot of you have told me them already. This plan requires your input, and I mean requires your input not just to be written, but to be implemented. This needs to be supported by the people that are here and the people that you're connected to as well. And there's the bottom point here that I think is quite interesting. It's also quite new in metropolitan planning like this, is that you really have the opportunity to be participants in the implementation of this work. It's not that just Ryan and his team and the communities they're connected with take this plan and go do it, but there's opportunities to be advocates in this work. There's opportunities to champion some of these projects. There may be an opportunities to build out some of these programs that are suggested through this work. So we hope that you take that seriously and see yourself reflected in one or hopefully multiple of these actions moving forward. Our activities tonight, it's not just going to be about talking. We've got a number of those. I'm going to set those up a little bit later, but we want to test the regional vision, of course. We want to consider some reactions that you might have to some of our fundamental building blocks of the plan. We want to identify really what's missing, because we know that there's going to be blind spots in this work. We've been working hard to involve a lot of people, but surely there's some things that we've missed. So we want you to tell us that. And then last, we want to tell you what's next and how you can stay involved, and actually how you can also help to connect more people into this specific conversation through online forums, which will be live after tonight as well. But with that said, I think what we needed to do now is set up a little bit of the state of your region today. So where is this region right now in terms of its demographics, its economics, or its place-based phenomena? So in order to do that, I'm going to bring up Ryan Phelps. He's the project manager here with the Madison County Council of Governments. He's going to walk you through some of the finer points of where you all are today.